But when I see what I see with these parents, these concerned parents that are here today to make their voices heard, that warms my patriotic heart. However, to know once again that these folks have been told, well, that's my job, I'm just doing my job. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You either have freedom or you don't. This country used to stand up for freedom and liberty, and we were a beacon of light to the entire world.
Well, folks, I'm with Steven Leach. He's with the Freedom Post, an investigative journalist, all the way up from South Carolina, if you can believe it. And he's actually been covering some of the shenanigans here at the Durham District School Board. Steven, I don't know if you saw our encounter, but the security has said no parents allowed and no media allowed. Now, unlike the United States, we unfortunately don't have a constitution with First Amendment rights. Otherwise, I think we'd be in a court of law in the days to come. But what do you make of this idea of these educrats shutting down the parents, the people who pay their salaries, from even getting in the building?
This is tyranny in the highest order. This is also voter apathy. The most important elections we can all as citizens elect and vote for are in the lowest chamber of our governments, and that's the school boards. And when the voice of the parents aren't heard, the voice of Canadians aren't heard, and the voice of the people aren't heard, who do we cry out to?
And Steven, I think you've touched upon a very important point going back a couple of years ago. Look what happened in Virginia. As you mentioned, the lowest position of office in North American democracy is school board trustee. And yet in Virginia, Mama Bear woke up. School board meetings were packed. They were outraged about critical race theory, radical transgenderism, wokeness. And the effect from that low down the food chain actually had a change in the governor from Democrat to Republican, which was never supposed to happen. So isn't that a sign that if you get involved, if you make your voices heard, you can bring about change on the most profound level?
Precisely. And that's the thing we've seen throughout history, is we know usually it's a very small motivated group of individuals are the ones that make the biggest changes. In fact, to go back to the U.S. Revolution, it was approximately 10% of the American colonists at the time that actually stood up and gained their independence. So here in Canada, we can do the exact same thing. The people have the power. When they fear us, we have freedom and liberty, and we can only get that back until we're under God. Until then, we're going to continue to fight this, but we need our patriot Canadian people to stand up and make that stand and take the fight to them.
And even we see this happening in the U.S., don't we, with school boards there? We have the Department of Justice and the FBI describing concerned parents as domestic terrorists. Yes. Oh, have those law enforcement agencies been co-opted, Stephen?
There are a lot of agencies have. We have to understand, it's not just here in Canada, but in the United States too. Every single level of our government and of our institutions has been corrupted. In one form or another, they are corrupt. We don't have the judicial branch because they're corrupt. We don't have the legislative branch because they're corrupt. We don't have a lot of the police branches because a lot of them are corrupt. And that's not everybody. My daughter dates a cop up in the little town of Lindsay, and he's a great patriot. He's a Canadian Army veteran also. But we can stop this by standing up and declaring our rights are sovereign by God and not by the government of this country.
And Stephen, what happens when you see the likes of this school board, throwing a roadblock in the way of standing up? These parents wanted to come and ask questions and voice their displeasure. They're standing outside, and they've been told by security like they're, to use one phrase, as though they're a basket full of deplorables, to get to the sidewalk because evidently this is too much of a mass gathering. And some people have, if you can believe it, Stephen, signs.
Yes, I saw some of those signs, and I am one of those basket deplorables, voted for President Trump twice. But when I see what I see with these parents, these concerned parents that are here today to make their voices heard, that warms my patriotic heart. However, to know once again that these folks have been told, well, that's my job, I'm just doing my job. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You either have freedom or you don't. This country used to stand up for freedom and liberty, and we were a beacon of light to the entire world. And now look at us. We can't even get our own parents into the school board to have we the people being heard.
And it's despicable because when we were here at the last board meeting, we saw a parent, he was asking that the board extend a program. It's for children that are having a tough time. It's a mentorship program to help them graduate, but it's only for black children. And he was saying, shouldn't this be for all disenfranchised children? You know, it was back in, I believe, August 1963, the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made the famous speech to, you know, his dream being that a person's character, a person would be judged by the content of their character, not their skin color. And right now, it seems that school boards in both our countries, they're trying to bring back a form of South African apartheid.
This is liberalism. Yeah. This is progressive liberalism, and it's not freedom. It has nothing to do with liberty. It has nothing to do with the rights that we were born with under God in this country. This is straight up tyranny, and if you go through history, you can see how liberalism has slowly eroded our freedoms and our liberties over time. Here in Canada, since the late 60s, has accelerated, especially under Trudeau Sr. Yeah. But now in the last 20 years, looking outside in, and I saw what I saw up here, I'm disgusted, but when I heard those first honks of that trucker protest, trust me, the world heard, and they talk about it down south as much as they do here.
Terrific. Well, Steven, I would say, too, that if you're a classical liberal, these days you're a conservative.
Yes,
I think these liberals have more in tune with Marxists and the philosophy of we have to tear down society and then rebuild it in a Marxist utopia, which never happens. No. Just ask the people in Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba, you name it. Anyways, last word goes to you, and where can we find your journalism?
You can find my stories and a bunch of other stories about not only the freedom movement, but returning our natural freedoms and liberties from God back to America, and including the United States in that. It's freedompost.ca. It's a local Canadian outreach, and we're gaining a lot of people now because we're writing the stories that people are really interested in this time of our life.
Thanks for your time, Steven.
Thank you, Kylie.
Well, folks, I know you count on Rebel News to bring you the other side of the story, and indeed, I don't see any other media here today. I guess this is a big nothing burger for them, you know, concerned parents, concerned about their children. Well, folks, we need your help. If you can kindly go to rebelfieldreports.com, that's rebelfieldreports.com, and if you're able to make a donation, that would be greatly appreciated.